And now let's get back to your host on Paying Attention. Here he is once again, Tom Duggan.
Yeah. Hold down your applause. Phil's not here yet. We'll have to kill a little bit of time. We'll figure it out. All right, I'm back with my co-host Paul. We're waiting on Phil DeCologero, Phil of the future. I wanted Phil to come on, Paul, for a couple of reasons. He is running for re-election, and I wanted him to talk about that a little bit and, give him a little free.
What is he running for?
He's a member of the North Andover Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
And it's a 3-year term, and it's staggered terms. So only, some years one person comes up for re-election. Some years 2 people come up. It's a 5-member board. Come on up. We're already on the air. You should have gone to the bathroom before you got here, Phil. It's all right. It's not like he's done this before, right? So we wanted Phil to come on. He's running for re-election. We want to talk a little about like North Andover stuff, but he's also a member of a great nonprofit organization called the North Andover Merchants Association, and they have a big event coming up, and it's actually the night after my event, and I'm actually going to go, even if I haven't had any sleep, I'm going to go. And they do a lot for the downtown North Andover area. They do a lot for North Andover in general, and he's also involved in a bunch of other stuff, so we thought we'd have him come on and chat with us about some things. Phil, thank you for joining us.
See, this is new for me.
Yeah,
I've never been on this show before. I've never been on camera with you.
Really?
No.
Okay.
We've always been on radio, so
Oh,
I've
right,
never had to prepare ahead of time.
This is what they look like, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly.
So, but first, before we start, what do you think of the new digs? Much better than CAP, right?
I think it's neat. I mean, I assume this place doesn't smell like Tom. You just happen to smell like this place.
That's right, yes.
I pulled up and I was like, it smells like Tom's apartment on the outside. So I guess that's... so clearly you're not the only one that smokes, I guess, anymore.
No. Well, we're upstairs from Two Guys Smoke Shop.
No.
Here at Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. And I definitely want to thank our sponsors, Century 21, Team Zingalis, Twin Lights Security and Investigations. And make sure you give them a call if you need security for any kind of an event or an investigation. EIS Investigations. And I want to give a free plug to DNA paternity testing in Lawrence. That's got to be a tough job. I mean, if you're doing DNA paternity testing in Lawrence, you're a very busy person. And she's been advertising with us for a little while, and her ads ran out last month. And I'm not sure whether she's coming back or not, but I wanted to give her a free plug because I don't know whether she got any calls out of her ad, and I want to just make sure that she gets some. So if you're not sure who the baby daddy is, call DNA paternity testing in Lawrence. I think they're on Ames Street. Or maybe South Broadway now, and but give them a call. DNA paternity testing. Google them; it'll come up, and then you'll find out who the baby daddy is. You'll thank me later. You get that child support payment. That's if DOR wants to pay you.
Sounds like the Maury show, doesn't it?
Right? Yeah, we could do a
Povich.
whole Maury Povich show. Right? Phil is already uncomfortable. This is going to be a great interview. This is awesome. So why don't you start off with tell people who you are, what you do, and then we'll start asking you questions about stuff.
So I think I walked in on you introducing me as I'm wrapping up my 3rd year on the Board of Selectmen in North Andover. I currently serve as chairman of the board.
Your first term?
Yes, we do 3-year terms. So I think when I walked in, you were explaining that there's a 5-member board, and we stagger our terms so that 1 year there's 2 seats, 1 year there's 2 seats, and then the final year there's one seat. So we stagger things so that there's never just a complete turnover. Not like what you see other communities around us. Sometimes everyone's up all at once, and so then everybody who comes in, there are instances where everyone is brand new. So it allows for a little bit more institutional.
What does a selectman do for a town?
Good question.
For a town like North, it's Andover or North Andover?
North Andover and Andover have the same form of government, and so it's funny. Yeah. I just for the sake of explanation, I always kind of describe it to people who are more familiar with cities as it's like the city council, but it's not. So the Board of Selectmen is the executive branch of town government. Well, the town meeting, and I'm sure we'll talk about town meeting at some point this afternoon, but town meeting serves as the legislative branch. So
is there a chairman of the board?
There is. That's in North Andover's case. That is me. Yeah. But so the way that works is that you have the Board of Selectmen, which actually acts as almost the board of directors. They hire a professional manager, in the case of North Andover, to manage the day-to-day operation of the town. And, for a lot of us on the board, it's prioritizing. As a great example is our budget and policy statement really maps out everything that we as a board want to see done in the next 1 to 5 years and beyond. And so it's prioritizing expenses, which we then present to town meeting being the legislative body, like again the city council and a city form of government, approves that budget. They can make amendments to it by reducing, not expanding upon, but reducing. For me as a selectman, when I got elected, I really wanted to see us do something about, it's funny, we were talking about mental health before. I guess you two were talking about mental health. I really wanted to see us do something more with mental health, specifically regarding addiction. So much of the root of addiction is related to mental health issues and people self-medicating. And so one of the things that's exciting this year is we've included in our budget a mental health program that mirrors what they've done successfully in Andover, where we do, by the way, have metrics to compare it against. You know that you said before, people like to spend money without showing results. In the case of Andover, they showed results. And so that's why there's a little bit of intrigue on my part. So I'd like to see that in my next 3 years, get that program implemented. Hopefully it's approved by town meeting this May.
Town meeting, if I could just stop. Town meeting is the most pure form of democracy in America. Your city council is like in Lawrence, Haverhill, you go to city council. They basically make the policy decisions for the town. They make the spending decisions for the town. But at town meeting, and under this form of government, any voter can show up at the high school at town meeting and make an amendment and say, no, I want to take $10,000 out of the budget and hire a school resource officer. Or I want to take $15,000 out of the budget and pave High Street. And if enough of your fellow...
Or, Tom, and I want to interrupt, we've had people come and say that they wanted to see us spend billions of dollars if we don't do X or don't do Y. Right. And of course, the town meeting fortunately showed better judgment than that and rejected such proposals. But the point being, it's a pure form of democracy where anybody can approach the podium and say, I want to do X or I want to do Y.
Come up with their own ideas.
Which is very different from a city council form of government, because if I have a proposal before the Lawrence City Council, I have to submit it to the council president. He can just decide not to put it on the agenda if he doesn't want to discuss it and doesn't want to have it happen. If he puts it on the agenda, it's up to the people who are elected, the elites, the insiders, to wheel and deal amongst themselves and vote yes or no on it. And you have no say about, well, geez, can we add an amendment for this or for that? But in town meeting government, it's the actual people. It goes back to like the Constitutional Convention, right? The actual people show up and say, no, I've got an idea. And if their fellow citizens say it's a great idea, then they do it. And then the Board of Selectmen's job is to implement that. Right. And to do what the people tell them to do. So when I moved to North Andover and I went to my first town meeting, I was in heaven. I mean, as a First Amendment guy, this is the best. Anybody can speak on any topic that they want that has to do with the budget or what's on the town warrant, and if we had more of that in America, I think we'd be better off.
All politics is local, right? As Tip O'Neill once said.
It is. It's messy. I mean, certainly you have to be somebody who's willing to go and sit through. But that's government at any level can be contentious. I think that it's messy because I think there are people who would like to go and participate, like the idea of it, and then they go there and they listen to the debate and. Not everybody wants to hear a debate on every single issue. Right.
Well, yeah, you've got some people that want to talk about every single issue, right? And for 20 minutes each.
And some people are there because they want to talk about their issue or they want to listen to their issue, but don't really want to talk about or listen to other issues. And not because they're stubborn. It's a reminder that the act of governing, the job of governing, is not something that's done just in a ballot box. Just in a ballot booth. So it's pretty neat. I think you see about, even on our worst years, you see about 300 to 400 people participating, which... I said this yesterday. I was talking to one of our colleagues, and it's great because it's a feeder system, for people who want to get involved in the community in any way that they can. And it's not – there aren't obstacles to that. If you want to get involved in North Andover's town government, you show up to a town meeting. We don't have – some communities have representative town meeting. You have to be elected from your precinct or your ward.
Right.
I don't know if
that bastardizes democracy, if you ask me. Well, it creates another layer in between government and people. I like the way North Andover does it. North Andover, I think it's the best form of government in the country. And now I realize you can't do that in cities sometimes, right? You get thousands and thousands and thousands of people. But it works good. It works for a town like North Andover. And even when I'm on the losing side, like the marijuana debate, I drove home from that marijuana debate last month and felt really good. That even though the town didn't do the way I think they should have done it, that the people spoke and that their voices were heard. And that was the end of it. Like, there's not going to be any more. Like, we discussed it. We debated it. It was contentious. People yelled at each other. They accused each other of all kinds of stuff. Then there's a vote, and then everyone goes home, and it's done. City council form of government, they can bring it back as many times as they want until they can get the result that they're looking for.
I think what you saw, part of the reason why you drove home and you probably felt really good, even though, like you, we agreed on this issue, and we ended up losing. I think the fact that it was run as flawlessly as it was, when you have 3,000 people in a room and they're split pretty evenly about a position or about an issue that both sides feel very strongly about their
A
position.
lot of passion in that room.
There was, but I have to give a lot of credit to our town moderator, Mark DiSalvo.
He's amazing.
To manage 3,000 people.
Is that an average town meeting population? 3,000?
No,
okay.
no. Actually, I think that
I think that's extraordinary.
So we had. I'm gonna dig back. So I think our largest town meeting in history was in 2006, and we had a very contentious summer town meeting in the high school where about 3,000 people
Was there a
flooded
topic?
and it was about whether or not we were going to have trash fees. It was my first town meeting. I think I was 19. There was overflow. We were going into the auditorium. People were in the cafeteria. I mean, it was wild, and people didn't necessarily treat each other with respect. I mean, you always have people who feel offended. I mean, you had people who were really quite rude to each other, and I think it left a lot of people with a bitter taste towards town meeting or bitter sense. I don't know if you attended that one, Tom, but you were living in town at the time.
You weren't the chairman at the time, I would imagine. So
I was.
What is the chairman the person that's supposed to say you're acting crazy?
So we elect a moderator. North Andover, and that's happening this year. So part of North Andover's town government is you elect selectmen, you elect school committee members, you elect representatives to the Greater Lawrence Tech School Committee. You elect a representative each year to the housing authority that manages our local housing. You also elect a moderator for a 3-year term, and that person's job.
He's the one, okay.
He or she.
Or she, yeah.
Sheila Doherty is the moderator in Andover. Again, for listeners in Andover, it's the same deal in both communities. You elect a moderator. That person's job is to run the town meeting and help, to act as moderator. I mean,
for those who talk too much, you have to, cut them off a little bit, perhaps. For those who get a little too emotional, you have to calm them down.
Stop those personal attacks.
Stop the personal attacks, right. Important job for a meeting like that.
It is. I mean, in that setting, I mean, there was a lot of emotion leading into it. I mean, there was a lot of debate on Facebook. And I think that there were some threads on Facebook where people read it and just felt so disgusted by the whole discussion that I think a lot of people were nervous about how town meeting would go when people got in front of a microphone and got in front of the crowd and, there's applause for whatever side you're on or booing. I mean, there was that concern because it can reflect really poorly on a community. And I think that this, again, it's
good media though, you think. It's like a presidential debate. You say something good and half the place claps and the other boos, and
it does kind of become like Maury Povich after a while.
I heard it was on at Jamie's that night, so apparently it was enough of a there was enough intrigue about town meeting that they decided it was worthwhile putting on the flat screen TVs at the bars around town. So
I can say that, a lot of people are going to be surprised to hear me say this, but I just believe in giving credit where credit is due. I think Mark DiSalvo is doing an awesome job as the town moderator. I know he's left wing. I know he's in with the Democrat Party.
Why do you say it that way?
Well, because before he became town moderator, we all knew Mark DiSalvo as the inside Democrat who was always trying to recruit Democrats and push liberal ideas on the town, and that's true. And when he was running for moderator, all those of us who were on the other side of the political end of that were worried about him using the position as moderator to push his liberal Democrat ideas on the town. And we just wanted a moderator to moderate the meetings. He proved us wrong. He got up there at meeting after meeting after meeting at town meeting and ran right down the middle, was very fair to both sides, even sides that we know he didn't agree with. He's an extremely fair individual, and I don't think he gets portrayed that way by the people who disagree with his politics. I was one of them, and that's why it's like only Nixon can go to China. That's why I'm the one that I want to say it. I want to be the one to say it because I was one of the people that campaigned against him when he ran. I campaigned for Dr. McMillan. Thought Dr. McMillan would have been a great moderator, but Mark DiSalvo has surprised me, and there isn't half the shenanigans that people thought were going to happen. The only thing that I would add, and I don't think it's a deficiency on Mark's part, I think it's just something nobody's thought of, and that's that my biggest problem with the last town meeting in North Andover, they were arguing over the marijuana facility, and people were off. They were off message. You had a doctor got up there and showed brain scans of what marijuana does to a teenager's brain. We're not discussing that. We're not discussing whether marijuana should be legal or not. We're discussing whether or not we should have this facility in North Andover. And I would like to see the town moderator, whether it's Mark or anyone else, try and keep people more focused on what the issue is, because that meeting didn't have to be 3 hours. It could have been an hour and a half, because you had people getting up there talking about the evils of marijuana. Well, if we were debating making it legal, fine. But we lost that fight, right? I voted against making marijuana legal. That fight is over. That was on the ballot. The voters chose. It's legal. Why are you making an argument about something that's not before us? And because it's marijuana related, they got away with it. But I'd like to see the town moderator at least be a little bit more tough. If you're going to talk about an after-school program, I don't want parents getting up and talking about special needs. I want them to talk about the damn after-school program. That's my only suggestion, and I know that
a constructive criticism that you made, but in fairness, that was a pretty unique topic.
It was.
Marijuana is not a topic that gets debated,
right.
Although it feels like it does every year at our town meeting. The reality is it's a new issue,
yeah.
And we were debating whether we were going to have a bylaw limiting or prohibiting it. Period. I mean, This was our first time. We were developing a whole new bylaw for an issue that up until very recently was illegal anyways. I think the uniqueness of the topic is why the debate went the way that it did. But I agree with you. I think that the way he runs a town meeting is efficient. I mean, I think it makes it enjoyable to sit through. I think if you're somebody, that's a loosely used term. I think there are some people who just don't like sitting through town meeting, period, but do it because it's their civic duty. But he certainly makes it easy. If you're a first-time participant, he makes it easy for you to go there, understand what's happening, and I think it's less intimidating,
right,
to approach that microphone.
He's also implemented measures when he first became town moderator 3 years ago. He implemented measures. I'm sorry, six already. Yep. Wow. Boy, I feel old. He also implemented measures when he became town moderator to make it more open for people who couldn't physically attend. So if you wanted to email a question during town meeting, you could email a question in, and he would look at it, and if it was relevant, he would get up to the microphone and say, on behalf of Paul Murano, who asked this question, he wants to know, how does the Finance Committee feel about this issue?
So it's live on cable TV, right?
Right,
okay.
Yeah. So people can watch it online, they can watch it on TV, but they can also email in their questions. There are a lot of people in North Andover that work second shift can't go to town meeting, but maybe they have questions about things. Maybe they want a certain point to be made, and he opened that up, and I certainly don't ever want to see anybody voting electronically for town meeting. I want people present if they're going to vote, so we can make sure you're who you are, who you say you are. But having more participation, I think, is always good. Having more voices, I think, is always good, and Mark did that.
So that's your favorite thing that he did?
Yeah, so far.
I would have guessed your favorite thing, and I was surprised to know that this wasn't required, which is that if you approach the microphone and you have a financial interest in an article, you have to disclose that now.
Oh, good.
And that's something
a la the Wendy Wakeman debacle. Yeah, with the Historical Commission. All right.
Anyway, so at least with Mr. DeSalvo, when it comes to North Andover Town Meeting, when it comes to the North Andover Town Meeting, and you approach the microphone, you have to say if the article that's before you is something that's going to financially benefit, or you are an immediate family member will personally benefit from financially. It's something that I don't think I really ever thought of it. I mean, again, you're talking over 6 years ago that he became moderator. But it was something that I think other town moderators across the state took and said, okay, we're going to run with this, because you do I think of this particular issue that popped up. You had town residents that wanted to make a change. They felt passionate. They felt like it was something that should happen in North Andover. And there were people who did have financial interest, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it is important because it helps, I think, people digest whatever the argument is.
It gives people a full picture of why people are objecting or are being in favor of something, right?
Sure. I mean, it just allows you to make, right? Everybody reacts differently. We're going to have, I'm sure, many more discussions.
There's one other thing that Mark, and I think Mark did it. If he didn't, then you can give the credit to whoever the other person is that did it. But for the first time this year, I showed up at town meeting, and they asked me for an ID. They said, you have to give me an ID.
There was no have to give an ID. It was in order to expedite registering, you could provide your ID. I believe the way that it worked was that you could provide your ID, and it would allow people to just enter it into a poll pad. So that way it was about efficiency. You didn't have to have an ID.
I was told that I had to, and when he first asked for my ID, I got mad because my first reaction was, I've been coming here for 15 years. I've never been asked for an ID. What do you mean an ID?
You did not have to show
And then
ID.
it snapped in my head, and I went, oh, this is a good thing. We should have ID, because we don't want people from Lawrence or Methuen coming into North Andover to vote, right?
That would be my question. How do you know that the people that are going to town meeting are from that town? How are you sure of that?
So you have to go and check in at the registration booth the same way that you would go and pull a ballot.
You do?
You go in, and then they let you in. And in this case, because of the size, the scope of this meeting was so large that after you registered, you were given, when you go to a carnival and you get the all-day pass, they put a band on your arm that's waterproof. Basically, they put those bands on your arm. So basically, it was. They put a band on your arm, and so you had to have it, I think, on your left hand, and that was the hand you had to vote with. So that way, the tellers, because we had, I believe, 60. I think we had 60 volunteers counting. I mean, we had I think the final number was about 2,600 people voting. And so there were folks in every section having to count. And there were I think two people in every section counting the votes. And then they'd have to make sure that, each one got the same number. But yeah, it was pretty tightly policed to make sure that you didn't just have random people.
It's very efficient. It's very efficient.
But you think that people might come into these town meetings saying there's somebody from the town that they're not? Is that why you want an ID?
Well, yeah. You have people who are non-voters, right? Yeah. So let's say no one knows who Tom Duggan is. I'm just a guy who lives in North Andover. I'm not a public person, right? I know my friend Alan Knowles isn't going to show up. Right, but I'm not a registered voter, but he is. I can go in and say, Alan Knowles. They cross me off the list, they hand me my thing, and I can vote. Well, I'm not a registered voter. I shouldn't be voting.
Think that happens often enough to...
Probably not in North Andover, but why have the mechanism that would allow it? Because somewhere down the road, we're going to have a contentious issue that does affect another town, and people are going to be busing people in, and then we have no way to stop it. We have no way, unless we know a person and we catch them doing it, there's no way to stop it. It'd be like Lawrence voting.
So in our 400-year history, because that's North Andover, 370 years? Maybe we will have a contentious issue that impacts people. I'm sure we already have that impacts people in other communities.
Like once every 10 years, right? We have like a big issue. We had like the override issue 10 years ago. We had the marijuana issue this year.
Well, big issues that impact us. I mean, I guess it could be argued. It depends. It could be argued that the marijuana issue actually impacted people in Haverhill. I mean, let's put it this way. There were people in North Andover who were very passionately opposed. And I chuckled, not because I certainly disagreed with them, but not because I didn't take their argument seriously, but I chuckled because if you actually took a line from the Osgood property and drew a perimeter around it, every single person living in the city of Lawrence lived closer to the Osgood property than a significant chunk of North Andover.
Right.
And so it was funny because you had a lot of people who said, this is really going to hurt our brand. I didn't believe that was the case.
I think Rosemary Smedili, I can't believe I'm saying this again. People are going to drive off the road twice today. I think she's the only one that brought up a good point on the other side when she talked about the brand. She said, North Andover's brand is sheep shearing, helping veterans, Veterans Day, Memorial Day. That's what we're known for. We don't want to be known as the place where the pot farm is. We don't want to be North Andover. Well, that's where they grow marijuana. I think it was at least a valid concern. I don't think it was valid enough to stop the project, but I think she at least brought a valid concern. Everyone else that spoke was just lying. Everyone else that spoke was really against marijuana being legal, and that's what they were arguing against. They weren't saying anything valid that this project would do that would hurt the town. They were saying it's bad for kids. It's going to be a drive-up window. They're going to take all the water out of Lake of Chickawick. And none of those were true. None of those was true. And they were only lying because they were too embarrassed to admit that their real position was that they're against marijuana, and that's an illogical, irrational position since it's already legal.
I mean, lying is a strong word because I don't think that everyone was lying. I don't think that there was necessarily conscious lying on anybody's part. I think everybody, proponents and opponents alike, approached those microphones and wanted to tell their story and wanted to say why they were in favor or against the project.
And I think where the lie comes, Paul, hopefully you'll agree with me on this. If you get up at a microphone and you say, my objection is X, Y, and Z, but your real objection is A, B, and C,
yes,
that's a lie. And
what if their objection is A, B, C, X, Y, and Z?
Well, that's actually what I was going to say. For example,
Paul's always got to go that way.
If you
you would agree with me? No, that's not.
You're saying these people don't want marijuana legalized,
right?
Therefore, they don't want this project,
right?
I think the the all six of them that Phil just mentioned could be something like, to use another example, if you don't like the idea of strip clubs and you know that they're legal, that doesn't mean that you want them in your town.
Right.
So you don't like the idea, and I don't want them in my town. I'm not saying it shouldn't necessarily be illegal, that night.
To me, it was more like someone showing up at town meeting and voting against a liquor license for a liquor store on Main Street because they don't think alcohol should be legal. But they don't say that at town meeting. They get up and they say, alcohol is bad. It hurts children. This liquor store is gonna hurt the neighborhood. You're gonna have bums hanging around outside of it. People are gonna be bumming cigarettes off you. It's gonna cause a problem. When they don't really think those are the objections at all. They really just don't want alcohol to be legal. They don't like that alcohol is legal, so they're opposing it. And they're going to make up excuses to be against it that sound more rational than their real reason.
Then you know what needs to happen then? They need to have a moderator like you who can see through people's questions.
Read their minds.
Right. And say, Are you saying this because you really don't like X, Y, and Z? Or, just clarify their own minds for them?
I think the job, though, that's the job of the voter. When you're sitting there, you have to listen to the argument, and you have to decide, is this something that matters to me? I mean, everything that Tom's saying right now is an observation he made as a North Andover resident, and every resident had the ability to make those observations if they were at town meeting, and if they wanted to come to your conclusion, they could. I didn't necessarily come to that. I mean, I think that there was a lot of fear. I think that there are people who think of marijuana in a very different way than other people do. I mean, I have to say, so when
it's generational too, right?
I don't know. I have to say, I don't think it's generational.
Really?
I knocked on doors, and it's really funny. I knocked on a door of of a former second grade teacher of mine, a really amazing woman, and it was funny. She goes, "Oh, Phil, I'm glad you came by. I just got back from Foxwood." And I laughed because, of course, what's the next topic of conversation? Well, what do you think of town meeting in 2 weeks that's coming up? And I found myself talking to my second grade teacher about how we both agreed that this would be a good site for our town. And I don't think I talked to a retired firefighter who said the same thing. He was a little bit more direct about, heck yeah, we should do it. But then I spoke to people that I went to school with, that I graduated high school with, who were like, "Oh, do you think I should go to town meeting?" And I said, "Oh, I think anybody should go to town meeting." "Well, do you think it's going to pass?" And I said, "Well, I hope it does." "Oh, then I better go because I don't want it to happen." And I'm like, this is funny because I speak, again, I'm speaking to my former second grade teacher who's long since retired, and she's in favor of it. And I'm speaking to peers, our contemporaries that aren't. And I think it was just an interesting discussion. I think one of the arguments that an opponent made was, how will you tell your kids not to do this? And I said, well, how do you tell your kids when, you have a glass of wine with your wife? What do you tell them about not drinking? They shouldn't drink before they're 21. That's the law. And I think that the same thing could be said about marijuana. Ultimately, I mean, we had the debate. We actually had the debate twice, Paul. So we had this debate at town meeting in May, and there was a feeling, quite a few people who spoke against it said that they didn't have enough time to review it.
Okay.
It was a little bit rushed last year. I felt comfortable giving the green light to it last year. The majority of the Board of Selectmen did. Of course, actually 58% of town meeting also did last May, but they needed to have 2/3 of the vote, and so it failed. And we were able, fortunately, to have a second bite at the apple, and that's kind of what this second town meeting was. Clearly, the group of people that gathered this past January didn't feel like we should pass it, and so the legislative body got together. They spoke. Any voter that wanted to go could have, and they said no to it. It's too bad. I think we both agree. We wish it didn't happen, but like you said,
I voted against making marijuana legal. I think Massachusetts finally did something right. They decriminalized it, so cops can still go after dealers if they're selling to kids, if there's, they're doing bad stuff. But they weren't being hamstrung by arresting people for possession of marijuana, clogging up the courts, clogging up the prison system. I don't know anybody who's ever robbed a bank on marijuana. I know people robbed banks on cocaine and meth and heroin and other stuff, but I've never heard of a guy robbing a bank or beating his wife or committing any kind of violence on marijuana. It usually has the opposite effect. It makes people much more sedate.
Well, it is legal in Massachusetts now, and it's not legal in North Andover. So we passed a bylaw that prohibits the cultivation and sale of recreational marijuana, and the public has spoken. So
before we wrap up with Phil of the future, Phil DeCologero, Selectman from North Andover, you also wear another hat, and that is the North Andover Merchants Association. You've got a big benefit coming up, and I want to give you an opportunity to talk about North Andover Merchants Association and talk about your event.
So I cannot claim credit for this event. This event is really the brainchild of Sylvie Folds. Her and her sister own Kids Carousel on Chickering Road. It's a resale shop. So Sylvie is a former president of NAMA.
I love her. I don't think she likes me, but I love her.
No, I would bet that you guys probably agree more politically than she and I do. But she doesn't even live in North Andover, and she is probably the MVP of town. She's actually, her husband is one of the police lieutenants in North Andover. But so anyways, so we have in the North Andover Merchants Association, it's a business organization in town that is made up of business owners, basically just try to make the town better in general, but also better for the business community. And so this year, I think, is the 6th or 7th annual Night of Honor Gala. It's an event that started a few years after we formed. I think 2012 was our first year, so do the math, that we had the event. We honor local businesses. We honor those businesses that are celebrating milestones, 5 years, 10 years. I think Rolf celebrated 65 years last year.
Wow.
I know that we've celebrated I think Small X celebrated either 90 or 100. But anyway, so we tend to honor Those businesses, we also recognize a Merchant of the Year. This year, it's Lisa Williams from AFC Urgent Care.
That's awesome. I love Lisa Williams and AFC Urgent Care, formerly Doctors Express. Her and her husband are wonderful people. I don't think people realize what they do behind the scenes for local nonprofits, for charities. When they find out just a regular citizen in town has a problem, Lisa will go help them. And never calls me and says, "Hey Tom, can you write a story about how we just helped this guy?" I'll actually hear from the people that they helped. They'll call me and say, "Hey, I know you know that girl Lisa from AFC. You're not going to believe what she just did." And they'll call me and they'll tell me, and it's wow, these are people that are just out in the community doing stuff to help people and really are not interested in getting any credit out for it at all.
Tom and Lisa are great.
Yeah.
So that's not the only reason you get recognized. A Merchant of the Year gets recognized because all around they just represent what it means to be a really great business owner.
Right.
The type of business owner that you'd love to have in your community. Our first year, I think it was Terry Holland from Stachys. We did Ed and Linda Petty from Ed Petty Photography. We did Jamie's. One of the reasons that Jamie Faria from Jamie's Restaurant was honored was because he took this idea, turned it into the successful business, and within a matter of a couple of years, it's now the quintessential North Andover place to go. I believe last year it was actually Taki's Pizza because, again, you had Jim and Mike Zanakis, who are cousins, who own their business and have really built it in, again, to a business that is a successful part of North Andover's business community.
Right.
And it's their acumen as business owners that were recognized. It's Jamie's, it's Stachys. It's not just because they give back to the community, but that's a big piece. So, Lisa was recognized because I don't think many people understand that here's a woman who she owns 2 medical offices. It's not a retail store. They're medical offices, which are fairly more complex. Urgent Cares in Methuen and North Andover. She's a mother of 5 in a blended family, and somehow she doesn't go crazy. Yeah. She's a little crazy, but
she likes me, so she's got to be crazy.
Well, she's a woman who has managed to take these 2 businesses, become important parts of the community, because Urgent Care, of course, fills an important gap in our healthcare system.
And the head of your organization, I just met the other day, Dawn
Pease.
Dawn Pease,
a former Merchant of the Year herself, in fact.
Dawn Sign Tech. She invited me to her shop and said, "You know what? We're in all these same circles, but we've never really had a chance to sit down and chat. Can you come by and have a coffee with me?" So I spent 3 hours there one day last Friday actually, and we got along amazingly. And we talked about some of the things that we do at the Valley Patriot with the Bash, some of the stuff that she does, and it's we should be helping each other out. We're all kind of doing the same thing. We ought to be working together, and she loves the idea. So
here's a woman. She worked in the printing industry and decided, you know what? I want to start my own business. She came to North Andover. She's on Flagship Drive, I think. But she came to North Andover and said, she lived here. She lives on Sharpness Pond. She said, I want to create my business here. Brought her employees, treats her employees well, gives them quality health insurance. She herself, she's from Canada originally. She started her business and said, well, the first way that I make this business successful is networking with other business owners.
Right.
She came to a NAMA meeting, decided to get involved, and I think that it was her second year of being involved that we honored her as the Merchant of the Year, because, again, that's the type of business owner you want. You want a woman who sees a need and says, you know what? I want to create a business like this. This is the type of business I want to run, and that's what she did. She creates a quality product. If you saw her studio, you understand that she does some really neat things there when it comes to vinyl printing. She actually does wraps that go all around vehicles.
I saw those. Those are nice, and they're multicolored. As you're looking at them, they change colors. I've never seen that before.
It's a brand new thing. In fact, she did a wrap around her car, so you can't miss it. It says Dawn Sign Tech, but it actually changes color if you're looking at it in a certain angle. It's a neat.
See, I could never do that because the people in Lawrence would be able to identify my car easier to shoot at it, so I couldn't do that for my car. But I understand why other people would want.
It's only people in Lawrence that are after you. Really?
Well, yeah, because that's where the threats are coming from.
And so you had asked specifically about the Merchants Association annual event. So we're doing that the last Saturday of it's the night after your bash. I don't know why I said your bash. It's Brenda Rosie's bash. That's
right, pretty much. Brenda and Maria's bash.
It is the night after Brenda Rosie's. The night after Rich and Brenda and Maria's bash.
Yes.
Where Tom Duggan just kind of crashes it. So it's Saturday, and so give me the date because I honestly don't remember that.
So you're on the 24th. I'm on the 23rd.
Okay. Because I thought they were double.
So everyone come to our bash on the 23rd. Then the following night, everybody go to the North Andover Merchants Association bash thing that they're doing. And where is it?
So it's at the North Andover Country Club, and the proceeds from this event go towards giving a scholarship to a young man and young woman who live in North Andover that are seniors in high school that are pursuing degrees in business. We are also giving this year, it's the first year that we're doing it, but we're giving a scholarship to anybody, one scholarship to a person who is not necessarily a resident of North Andover, but is connected to an existing business, because of course all these business owners They work their butts off to provide for their families, and that's what groups like this should exist.
Let's take a quick break. Do you want to stay with us for the next segment? We're going to do another 10-minute segment when we come back. Do you want to stay with us and just talk politics and stuff, or is that going to make you feel too uncomfortable?
What are we going to talk about? The Me Too movement with the dais of all men, and noticeably absent are the people that are actually
because you don't have to be that thing to have an opinion about that thing.
You don't have to be a woman to talk about sexual
Right.
assault.
Well, of course not.
No.
Well, was Ted Kennedy a poor person?
I think that if you're going to have a panel,
Ted Kennedy a poor person?
I don't think he was a poor person.
No, but he was the biggest advocate for women, wasn't he?
And for poor people.
And for poor people. That's what I meant. For poor people. Well, he was the biggest advocate for poor people, right? But he wasn't poor, was he?
No, but there's a big...
And he advocated for women, but he wasn't a woman, was he?
No, but we're
criticizing... You don't have to be that thing in order to have an opinion on that thing.
If we're going to criticize a movement, or I should say, if you're going to criticize a movement, we should probably try to have somebody who at least is impacted by the movement.
Yeah, no, listen, I'm impacted by the movement.
I bet you are.
The movement is not only impacting women, because the whole point of the movement is to screw men. So
that's what it is.
I happen to be a man, and I have an opinion on it.
It's not to bring attention to the fact that there are women in this world who are actually suffering at the hands of men, and people just don't even realize.
If you're a friggin' idiot and you don't know that there are women in this world that are being victimized by men, having a Me Too movement ain't going to help you. You're an idiot.
You don't think so? You don't think that this is...
people know. I mean,
no, I'm not going to say on this show.
If you live in the real world and you watch CNN or MSNBC for 4 seconds, you know that this is true.
You're right. The real world does watch CNN.
I hate you so much. All right, Phil of the future. Oh my goodness, I'm getting pictures on instant messages now.
Are you sure he's not Phil of the past after
that's
that
the end of the show. Holy good God. What is that? Wow. We'll be back after this on Paying Attention. As if I've survived this.
What's that? Can I see?